Hey guys, thanks for coming up. It's 11 o'clock. So, thanks for guys for coming out. Yeah, it's Mech Day. Hey everybody. So, same silhouette as last night. For anybody who's wondering what the heck is going on here, one silhouette for all 3 demos this weekend at Lightbox. Last night we did a demon, which is up on YouTube right now, and also a quick version of it on Instagram if anybody's interested in checking it out. And tonight we're going to use the same silhouette, kind of do the skins routine, and I'm going to try and do a mech. And I think I mentioned it last night, but I'll mention it just because it's a fresh start, that these do take a little bit longer. So I'm going to do my best to get everything done in an hour, but we'll see how it goes. Mech stuff there's just a lot more line mileage. So feel free to ask any questions while we're getting started. But I'm going to start roughing out some ideas, and if you guys have questions or anything like that while I'm chipping away at this, let me know. The mech style that I'm going to go for, I think it's going to be a little bit on the beat up side, a little bit of exposed tech, a little bit of paneling. We'll see how it kind of progresses. I'll start with the right brush. So, hope you guys are first Lightbox. That's awesome. Lightbox is pretty new, so I think you're probably in good company that there's not a ton of people who have done all of them. But congratulations on finding it. Lightbox. I got to go to the first live one. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. Can't wait to get back to that stuff. Do you have or recommend brushes? I don't use Procreate. I have used Procreate in the past just to try it out when it first kind of came out, but no, I don't use Procreate. And it's nothing against Procreate. I think Procreate's awesome. Just when I was getting into it, Clip Studio, which is what I like to draw in, released a version for the iPad, which is what I like to draw on when I'm kind of on the go and things. And it's damn near close to being like the full-fledged version of Clip Studio that you would draw on desktop. So it's kind of like this nice, sorry, I have to pay attention to make sure I get my perspectives as close as possible. It's nice that I'm able to use the same files, and I can actually do work, and I'm not like going in between different programs to do different kinds of work. So it's nothing that I don't like about Procreate. It's just I don't really develop and use it. But it is cool. Alright. So going to kind of go, I think, with a little bit of a boxy look. Any awesome demos you guys see today that's worth me tracking down and seeing? I know there's been a lot really cool ones going on. But if I could get some recommendations out of you guys of which ones are really hitting, that'd be awesome. So as I'm laying out these kind of like structures, I am thinking about like stuff I've seen, like mechanisms and things like that. But I'm also kind of thinking about the functionality of some of this stuff, just like how it moves. You know, so I'm starting to layer up this wrist here with paneling as if it was gonna like be able to flex as the wrist moves or something. Cool. Let's see, where am I at? Upgrade, your hand was awesome. Alright, I'll have to check that one out. Did you work on Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart? Yes, I did. I worked on Rift. I stayed there. I left a little over 2 years ago, but yeah, I worked on that. Once the embargo lifts, as far as like what we can show, I'm gonna start posting some of the work that I did for that. But yeah, I worked on it for about 2 years. Noah collects. Okay, cool. Oh, cool. I'm glad that you guys are posting these in because I'm just gonna go back through the chat and use it as like my playlist of things to go and watch. But yeah, I'm just gonna mechs are just kind of fun because even though they're really complicated as far as like getting all the accuracy done, there's a simplicity to them as well, which is every part that moves can be a separate element, and so you don't necessarily have to always make everything you don't have to worry about like how something transitions into another and how the flexible functionality would work, and that can be really freeing. So I enjoy that. I'll have to do something interesting on this chest, but let's get some of this other stuff laid out first. And if anybody didn't join us last night, the base silhouette that I did for this is up on Gumroad for free for download for anybody who wants to try out drawing on top of this exact silhouette. I just dropped a PSD up on Gumroad, and I think the link is in the description below the video. So feel free if you want to download that and goof off with it. Visual development for picture books. Man, I would love to get into doing some picture books. That would be awesome. Cool. I've been studying anatomy for a while, but now I'm struggling to push shapes or simplify anatomy into more cartoonish style. Can you give any advice on that? Yeah, well, the thing is, it's actually, let's see, anatomy is, I always remember this, I got to meet Chuck Jones, and anybody who doesn't know Chuck Jones is, he was a pretty famous Warner Brothers animator, did a lot of the Wile E. Coyote and Bugs Bunny stuff, and then went on to do the Grinch animated stuff from the 70s. Just an amazing artist, amazing animator and creator. And he was coming to our school when I was a kid, and yapping and having all kinds of conversations with people very casually. And he got into this one kind of conversation where he was sort of lamenting about how when you don't know how to draw something, you over detail things, and he was pointing at his finger, and he was insinuating that, like someone who really doesn't understand how a finger works or something like that is going to draw every little wrinkle and every little detail to kind of overcome their lack of understanding. Whereas someone who really does understand it is going to be able to just draw the back of that hand, that back of that finger, in just like a single line with just like a gesture, and it's just going to feel so lifelike and believable. And I just that kind of blew me away, because I was the guy over detailing everything, probably still do. But it was this really kind of like eye-opening piece of information. And I think the process that I've been going through and constantly trying to hone is that the cartoony stuff is actually more difficult in a lot of ways, because you're trying to represent things in fewer lines. So every line has much more weight bearing down on it as far as like what it's doing. So whereas if you were describing a hip, like I'm drawing in here, and you were doing a very believable hip, then you might be able to focus a lot on like all the little subtle undulations that are going on in the hip bone. But if you were doing a cartoon character, they would barely even have a hip, and you have to sort of still insinuate that they have a hip just by maybe like a subtle indent or outdent, depending upon what you want that character to be. So as far as like advice goes, I think it's just constantly reminding yourself that you're looking for ways to take anatomy and dumb it down into its simplest forms and still have it have that kind of fresh believability to it. And if you can pull that off, then I think you're in good shape. Let's see, what am I doing with this arm over here? Twins in, no, turns out, okay. I don't know if that's actually an answer to your question, but it's just it's a journey. The stylized stuff and the going too detailed with anatomy is difficult. And one piece of advice that's maybe just a bit more general is you got to be really careful not to look at other people's ways of interpreting anatomy too much. And I say that like kind of carefully, because you do have to look at other people's work a lot and learn from other people's work, but when you're purposely trying to develop your own kind of shorthand, you got to be really careful not to extend into other people's re-envisionments of an anatomy or those types of things before you've sort of established your own. Can get tricky fast. Alright, let's see where I'm at. So you're gonna go to color this time? I don't know. The line mileage on doing a mech is just so insane, and in order to kind of like pull off a design in around an hour and a half, we'll see if I can ink this thing fast and it's coming together. Then I'll drop to color. But with the time that I have, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to hit color. That's more of like with mechs in particular, it's more of a 3 to 4 hour process. But I will say, if anybody's interested, I'm going to start streaming again pretty soon here, and those I don't mind them running long because they're just on my own time, and I'll jump back into some of that stuff. And sometimes even when I'm in a pinch as far as time goes, I can draw up something beforehand and then just go to town coloring it so everybody can kind of like see new processes. But as far as like how I would color this, I think I did a mech, a 3-part mech, pretty recently, where it's like a yellow builder bot kind of set of robots, and that kind of takes you through like what I would probably do with this kind of character. So it's pretty standard right now. Like what I'm doing is I'm just kind of laying in like general structures, like nothing's too crazy as far as like what I would consider like a radical robot design. So I think I want to do that before I start adding in some sort of fun elements to kind of push the design a little bit more. That way we at least have a base. And again, I'm just kind of playing off of like flex points. So I'm adding in like these little, break points in the ankles and where the foot might flex. And then I can start adding things like non-anatomically correct things like these flaps that might stick off. Be kind of cool. And then the head. What am I going to do with the head tonight? I think. Let's see, what am I going to do? Try a vertical visor. This like fabric, like wrinkled fabric. That'd be kind of cool. And I think we gotta work that wrinkled fabric in somewhere else. Maybe we can change these bellows to like a wrinkled fabric, and maybe inside here instead of these panels we'll do like the wrinkled fabric. Let's see. It's good. Looking for questions. I think we're good. Okay. Anatomy a little bit. This will get me started. Still want to add some more details in. Probably want to cheat this up a little bit. Get a negative space in here. Alright. Oh good, I'm glad people are drawing along. Okay. So let's start inking this thing. No time like the present. So last night I tried to keep the whole thing on screen, but I'm going to have to kind of jump into the details. Oh, did I miss something? Oh yeah, the character faction. I love doing that stuff. I think I want to do more of that as well. Hope you guys can at least check that out if this is the type of thing that's interesting to you. Drawing folds is always kind of a battle. I think I might come back to the head because I like the simplicity of it, but I think I might want to try something else. But I can finish this wrinkly little neck here. This will make more sense when I get a little further. And mechs are another one of those things where the first part of the drawing sort of helps you establish like what you're going to do as you move through the piece, and then you start to kind of like relax a little bit because you start to know how things work and what the sort of like story behind the tech is. You start relaxing a little bit, so it looks like I'm noodling a little bit right now, and then this is just part of like how I normally approach mechs, is I just kind of like concentrate heavily on details in one little area, which is, I think, is kind of a bad habit, but I also kind of like it. Because this is just between you and I, I'll do it however I want. I think someone messaged me yesterday and they were asking a little bit about process, and like I would say that the kind of like finish that I'm doing right now is still relatively rough, but it's like a tight rough, like it's all the details. I really like working like this. Like I'm not like laboring over like the beauty of every single line. And that can be really relaxing. So I highly recommend just working tight, but not too tight, and that frees you up to try out ideas and not feel like you are locked. Alright, so let's I think I am going to use the tools tonight. So if anybody isn't familiar with Clip Studio, they have some pretty great concentric ring tools. These things work out great for doing mechs where you can lay out your perspective, and then these act as sort of like drawing guides, and I think this will be help us kind of like speed things up a little bit. And I do want to say, like, I use these a lot, especially in finished work, but the question always comes up, do you rely on them? And I do try to train myself to draw as many ellipses and straight lines as possible freehand, just so that I'm not too reliant on a guide tool. That way when I'm free sketching, I don't have to constantly be relying on a tool. But it's a tool, and you can't neglect the fact that it's awesome. Already save it? It has an autosave on it. Am I missing any questions? Good. Feel free to hit me with questions if I don't see it right away, just pop it back in the chat again, and hopefully I'll get to them. Prefer drawing mechanical things over organics? I get tired of both. If I draw too much organic stuff, I get really tired of it. And if I draw too much mechanical stuff, I get tired of it. So I do like to strike a balance between the two, but I really like drawing them, and I really like the functionality aspects of mechs, so I think I probably gravitate more towards them. But if I draw a few of them, then I immediately I want to go draw like a monster dog or something like that. But I've done entire projects that were all mechs and didn't really have any problems with that. I think the thing I have the most trouble kind of staying in is like fantasy stuff. And I love fantasy, but as far as like drawing it goes, because it's so rich with kind of like history and like timing with mechs and monsters and stuff like that. There isn't a lot of like weight put on like, oh well, that wouldn't exist back then, or blah blah blah. And I usually can ignore that stuff, but when you're sitting here drawing on your own night after night, you start festering on weird little details like that. I even like combining stuff like that now too. Like I'm starting to do a lot more mechs that have like a more of an organic appeal to them, where almost like the internals are technology, but the carapaces or the hard armor parts can be a bit more organic. I want to get into more of that. very specific kind of mechanical things that are best to draw for practicing mechanical drawing. I've never drawn a mech. I'm not sure where to start. A good way to start drawing mechs is actually to draw like a regular character, and then just start breaking down the pieces into sort of like panel lines, cylinders, spheres, almost like the underdrawing of this thing. Just so that you can kind of get the general functionality done, because what you're trying to do is mimic the movement of an organic form, and then as far as like reference goes, I really always go back to construction vehicles. I think that they have the most to offer as far as kind of like a visual exposed technology, because they're designed to be repaired, and so they're not designed to be pretty, so they're very exposed, and so they just have this like natural quality. And then the other thing is motorcycles, especially like Japanese motorcycles. They're basically robots as far as I'm concerned. They're just beautiful color palettes and exposed tech versus paneling. Those two things right there will get you started with any robot right there. And people do such beautiful stuff with custom motorcycles that if you're looking for really good inspiration, that's a really great place to start. With all the detail in your characters, how do you keep track? Like if you have to redraw characters multiple times, do you need like a character sheet? Yeah. With I've had the benefit of a lot of times, if I'm working on something, like when I was working on the Ratchet and Clank stuff, for instance, you really aren't drawing it over and over and over all that much. You draw it in a few poses. It's definitely still a trick to kind of keep track of everything, and then it goes to a 3D model, and then it's not really a problem for anybody at that point to track the details because they're baked into the model. So it's not. So then you can kind of go crazy, and I think you'll probably notice that a lot more in CG characters in general. That the details are just so much more elaborate. But recently, I worked on a show where the main characters were robots, and there was going to be they hadn't decided the style as far as whether it was going to be how it was going to be handled, whether it was going to be 2D or 3D or both or whatever. And so that was up in the air, and there was always this worry that it was just going to be a lot to manage for me, just because I feel like it's sort of my job to make sure that it's like whatever I'm designing is actually usable. I used to design a lot of really, really complicated 2D characters back when I was getting started, and I always got an earful from the production team about putting too many details in that can't be tracked. But as far as I'm concerned, it's better to ask for the forgiveness on that stuff, because you may take the wrong detail out that they're, number one job for the character designer, as far as I'm concerned, is to get the animator excited, or whoever is going to be using your design the most. And sometimes you'll find that you'll design something, and even though it's an impossible design, you got the person so jazzed to be working on the thing that they're much more willing to just put in the extra time to accomplish the how the design should look. I don't know if that makes any sense, but if you can inspire people, you're going to get more out of your designs, I think. So your number one job is to make sure that your team is psyched. And then if they're, I've had many characters where the animator falls in love with the character and they just take it and run with it and just do so many things that normally production just would not allow for. And that's huge to me. chest piece yet, but I'll come back to that as well. Are there any rules of thumbs, tips for making mech designs? Let's see, I can read that again. Are there any rule of thumb tips that are different from mech designs than other character design work? Yeah, let's see. In my experiences, mechs are... the shoulders are always a nightmare, because there's nothing flexible about them. So when someone goes to rig one, try and get that all functional, you really have to think through how the shoulder is going to move. So I naturally always allow a lot of extra space in there. The shoulders are a nightmare, but I would say almost everything else on a robot is easier for the production team as far as rigging and animating and things like that, because they just everything is one-to-one weighted, meaning like there's not a lot of like flexibility, and you're not trying to achieve the kind of like soft, flexible musculature of another kind of character, like an organic character or something like that. So there's a lot of benefits to a mech where you can get away with a lot. So you can kind of go nuts. One thing that's really fun about mechs is like you can put a lot of details in that don't actually, like, you know, like I'm going to do this elbow here that has this alternate joint, or like this shoulder joint here where I'm actually going to put like this secondary panel in like this. You know, if you were rigging this for cinema, for film, you could definitely rig this so that this had some qualities where it would flex as the character moved. If it, you know, maybe it would bounce around a little bit different than the main shoulder. But if you were in a game, you can put all these extra things in and imply a lot of more elaborate movement. But really, they're just going to get rigged on the same joint, and it's all really just an illusion that that there's a lot more pieces going on. And so I think mechs in particular benefit from the fact that they can really hide the limitations of a rig. Games in general often suffer from having joint limitations and things like that on characters. Probably not as much anymore, but I always liked when you got to do a mech because it always looked like more was going on. So yeah, you can hide details in mechs. That makes sense. And then another nice thing about mechs, and creatures can get into this as well, but mechs don't have to move as naturally. So, you know, if an arm doesn't extend all the way, you know, you can just say that's just like adds to the character, the design or something. I don't know, whatever you have to make up to justify your actions. mechs are definitely daunting as far as like when you start drawing them, everything's really wonky, and getting things to look, like they match across the form can be really time consuming. Struggle with the perspectives of things, and if you're just learning it, I wouldn't worry about that stuff at all. I would really focus on just doing the best you can with it, and think about the design and the functionality that you would want in a piece versus worrying about if it actually looks like it, because mechs have been done a lot, and it's important to always try and do new ideas. And just because you can't figure out the functionality, just because you can't draw something, because a lot of these shapes can get really ominous, and especially when you have to carry them over to a symmetrical arm. And I just don't think anybody should get caught up in that when they're just kind of coming up with ideas. Just draw sloppy, funny ideas, and then once you have an idea that you think is worth putting the time in, jump in and give yourself a headache trying to make the thing work. Yeah, this is Clip Studio. Clip is just a little backstory on Clip. It was originally designed to be a drawing program for manga comics, and it was all black and white, and it had these really kind of cool tools for doing page layouts and doing things really quick for manga. And then they merged with a company that was doing some color work, and they basically are like a Photoshop killer, if you want to think of it that way. And it still retains a lot of the functionality of the manga stuff, so you can still do layouts, a lot of really cool comic tools in this, guides. You can bring 3D models in just like you can in Photoshop, but you can do some pretty cool stuff with that. It's a really extensive program, and I gotta say, I am so overly impressed with the stability of the program. Even Photoshop completely dies on me sometimes, and Clip has crashed on me, but nothing serious, and it does a really cool backup thing as well. But the brush engine is like nothing else. It's Sketchbook Pro has a really nice brush. Photoshop does not. Clip, the brushes, you can really do a lot of really beautiful customization, and it's cheap. I think the program, I can't remember what the program is. I'm sure somebody on the chat knows, but it's cheap compared to Photoshop, and it does just about everything. So if you're looking for an alternative, it is a viable option. I still use Photoshop. It has its place for sure, especially when you're doing a lot of production work. The final output of a lot of files definitely still needs to go through Photoshop. And there's a lot of really nice plugins for Photoshop that I still like to use, but this definitely gives it a run for its money. One of the projects that I'm working on right now has to be exclusively done in Photoshop, and it's funny to go back and forth between drawing and between the two of them. But I have noticed that I think the developers at Adobe are realizing that their brush engine was kind of junk, and they've been putting some time into it because it is getting better. So I don't really like to bash on things. But if you guys haven't heard, Sketchbook Pro, a friend of mine and some business partners, they bought it back from Autodesk and they're starting to develop it again, and it's going to be pretty cool. So that's also, I think it's like $5 or $10 or something like that, and that's a really kind of quick and dirty program, but it has some really beautiful tools, and the brush engine in that is amazing. Yeah, and Sketchbook Pro also has ruler tools as well. And it's one of those programs that you open it up initially and it's a little bit simple looking, but then once you start customizing it, it starts to become like a Procreate kind of vibe. And then, yeah, the brush that I'm using right now for Clip Studio, if anybody's using it, it's up on Gumroad. People can check it out as they want to. It's nothing special, but it's just it's the sketch brush that I use to draw almost everything that I draw. And I stuck it up on Gumroad so people could try it out. And I highly recommend, if you're playing with it, to just start trying to customize the heck out of it and see if you can't make it into something that works well for you. Let's get some nice little tooth to it and sketchiness to it. And as I make more brushes, I'll probably start sticking them up there as well, but I haven't gotten back into it in a while. Let's see. Are the brushes cross-compatible? You know, I think someone said something was cross-compatible. I can't remember if it was you could bring Photoshop brushes into Clip or vice versa. Someone would know, but yeah. How do you design a mech to feel like it has personality? A lot of times it does come down to like the posture. You know, I know that sounds stupid, but I'm using the same posture from all the designs for these LightBox demos, but you know, just to to kind of just put a little slink in the spine or something like that goes a long way to making something feel impish, or if you want something to feel heroic. And a lot of times, like if you're struggling, I think a good rule of thumb is to draw just a regular character, an organic character that has the same silhouette, but you're not worried about the mechanicals of it yet, and just draw it, and then go back and start laying in the mechanical stuff after the fact. Because if you are struggling to kind of get that personality and trying to get all the technology correct at the same time, some people can do it, but it is incredibly difficult to get that personality. You're trying to get mechanisms, you're trying to get design. These are all basically like you running like personal little algorithms in your head, and I think it's just a lot to ask. So do it in stages. Draw a personality in a rough character, and then make it into a mech. But posture is a lot of it. You'll notice that in like Gundams and things like that, where you can tell which is a bad guy and which is a good guy just by the posture. But of course, stiff and lifeless in a mech isn't like the worst thing in the world, is it? It's kind of lend itself well to that thing, that design type. Let's see. That's right. Okay, so Clip made it possible to bring Photoshop brushes in. I haven't tried that yet, but I have to try that. And you're able to transform the photograph. Okay, that's cool. I don't know if you can then go back though. I don't think that's possible. Okay, how much do you practice daily or weekly outside of work stuff? Let's see. Practice. I definitely focus on my own work a lot. I try and give myself about an hour every day to just design for myself, if not more. On weekends, it's more. Sit on the couch and draw. If my wife falls asleep, I'll come in my office and start drawing again. So I practice a lot. I have a lot of personal projects and things like that going on. And then I life draw. I go to life drawing every week and do that. I find that is hugely important to be able to do this, to kind of break out of the, I think if I'm only doing character design, then I tend to get a little bit, I don't know how to describe this. It's gonna sound weird. It's almost like I'm getting like my skill set is getting incestuous on itself. It's like I'm only learning from the things that I'm doing, and I think then you start to form a lot of really bad habits. And I certainly have a lot of bad habits, and I'm just trying to break as many as possible. So I'm practicing, with life drawing with models. I do like to draw like my dog and stuff like that. I haven't done that as much as I should. But I'm practicing as much as possible. I don't know, if you follow me on Instagram, if you look at like everything that's on there is like all personal work, all stuff that I'm like just using to push myself. And then my other Instagram, which is just like life drawing and stuff like that, is called Red Doppler, REDDOPPLER, and that's just like where I post like life drawings and random other crap. But I think you got to practice all the time. This is just like we're just like at a point with like character design as far as like an industry where you gotta practice as much as you can handle. It's like going to the gym, but it's like there's just so many talented people out there that it's a hustle, and you just got to stay on top of your game. But on top of that, one thing that I think is worth noting is once you've done character design for a while, you start to really, it affects you the most that you really want to be able to very accurately depict your ideas. It's almost like drawing is a byproduct of the fact that you want to be able to express your ideas. And so practicing outside of work is really just like expanding your vocabulary, your vernacular, and being able to more clearly express your ideas. And so if that matters to you, like it matters to a lot of character designers and myself included, then practicing isn't really like for work per se. It's more like I want my ideas that are coming into my head to be as accurately represented as possible, and not just like I think we've all had those designs where you had an idea and then you started to draw and it became something else. What you ended up with wasn't that bad, but it certainly wasn't the thing that you set out to make. And that's fine. That gets you through the day. But as like a personal journey, I think a lot of us want to actually be able to achieve the things that are going on in our heads. I'm going to go back to the arms before I finish with these feet. Any chicken sketches lately? No, I haven't gone back to the farm. When did we go back to the farm last? My wife's an artist as well. We go draw at this farm where they have these beautiful black cows. Whatever that black cow is with like the white stripe that goes right down the middle. They look like an Oreo turned on its side. And they have tons of chickens and stuff like that. It's awesome. But yeah, ever since the lockdown, we've been kind of like staying away from stuff. So yeah, it's plants and dogs, and I like to draw skulls a lot. We have a pretty good skull collection. How many hours do I draw a day? Right now with work, I'm probably doing between 10 and 16 hours a day. Definitely put my 10 hours in a day. But I'm going to preface that I do kind of work sporadically. So I'll work for 3 or 4 hours at a time, and then I'll just go and do something with my kids or something like that. I work for myself most of the time. So I just kind of like will hit my deadline, hit my, whatever my project deadline is, and then take a break, and then I'll come back a few hours later and work again. And I really like to stay up till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and draw. So I have no problem working late at night if I didn't finish my work. But yeah, I'm putting in a fair amount of hours. And yeah, I usually do maybe 3 or 4 projects at a time. It's a lot, but you get used to it. By the way, about Red Doppler and the studio, how did your wife come up with the idea? I guess it was brewing for years. Great artist she is. What do you mean by coming up with the idea? Like her teaching studio? My wife is Alia Elbermani. She's a fine artist and teacher of fine art. She's a portrait painter or figurative painter. And she's just naturally a really gifted teacher. She's always loved teaching. So I go to her studio to draw because she puts on life drawing. It's she's just so passionate about it that it's such a great. I love that she's passionate about it, and I'm a little privileged to be able to do that type of thing and have someone put on such a great session. But we also share a lot of same kind of interests and things like that. So, but she's been doing her studio. She had her studio in California, then we moved to North Carolina, and she's been doing it here for probably almost the entire time we've been here. When you say real, let's see, where am I at? And then you try to draw something else. Those real skulls, yeah, I draw real skulls. We have a bunch of animal skulls. I got a bobcat when I was in college, and I used to just draw the heck out of it. Bobcat skull. It was absolutely beautiful. They're just so elegant. And I'm not really sure what the prize skull is. That sounds strange to say. But once you start drawing skulls are just kind of like this. I mean, they just are just filled with personality. You know, you can't help it. See these like really beautiful stories behind the eyes. They're a little bit ominous, but they're just like filled with the same kind of like shape logics that like humans and animals are all the way through. So if you train at drawing skulls, you're basically training yourself how nature develops forms. That's what I love about them. I have a lot of bird skulls. Used to live on a beach where storms would beat up seagulls, and you would find their skeletons on the ground. I would take their skulls home and draw them. Sounds so creepy when you think about it, but it's fine. Yeah, my wife, she's just kind of a go-getter with the teaching stuff. She just has always been very motivated to have her own studio. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever seen someone take on, but at the same time, if you're the kind of person that just like likes to help people, I don't really see how you cannot do it. I mean, I can't picture her not doing it, I guess. She just wants to make art and make other people do art better. Where are we at? We're at an hour. Yeah. I might be able to, if you guys are willing to stick around, I'll probably be able to put some tone on this thing. Let's see. If everybody's tired, we'll just call it. But I probably got at least another like 15 minutes of detailing. And then throw some tone on it. Feel myself sort of relaxing a little bit, which is kind of a mode that I get into when I'm drawing mechs, where it's almost like doing a Sudoku puzzle. And I want to make sure I'm going at the right pace, but you get kind of lost in the details. Her handle is Alia Fine Art, ALIA Fine Art, and I think her studio is just Alia Fine Art Studios. Inevitably with this mech, I'm gonna forget to put something in. I always forget to put something whenever I'm doing this stuff where I have to carry details across the other side. There's always something where I'm just like, oh, I need to come back to that, and then I forget. And I usually don't see it until I've posted it on Instagram. And I'm like, oh, well, it doesn't have another arm. Something stupid like that. Hands, we got the details on the Well, that's alright. That can work for the inside as well. Wait, I did do that wrong. Do that wrong? Yeah, I did that wrong. Okay, hang on. Let's fix this a little bit. Panel. Yep, okay. That's what it says. Do you ever make mechs that are more animal-like? Yeah. I like to do a lot of quadruped mechs. I think I just drew this arm completely wrong. I'm gonna re-sketch this for a second here. And get the other arm done, and then we'll go back and sketch it. Yeah, I love doing animalistic mechs, and those are really interesting to try. I actually find that they come across more, almost like you've seen the Boston Dynamics stuff, which is super scary, but amazing at the same time. But like the little yellow dog, they just have a ton of personality, and I think it's because a lot of animals don't emote with their faces, so it is much more about their posture. So I think it really lends itself to having like cool mechs, because it really does come down to how it's posturing and the posing. Making these fingers more complicated than I should, but whatever. The other nice thing about drawing mechs is you can always put a scribe line in to represent things like the side of something. Helps really turn the forms. So if I'm drawing like this like finger cylinder, I get to put a little knuckle notch in here that says like, oh, that's that, and that's the side. And I can do the same thing here. And you have all these little tricks where you can just say basically like, oh, this is how it's running in space. And then so sometimes if your perspective is kind of starting to fail a little bit, and but you have a scribe line that just says, this is generally how I intended it to work, it'll still sell it. So they can be forgiving at the same time as being kind of horrendous to draw. that arm is kind of messed up. I'll just finish at these feet, and then I'll go back and fix the arm, back to the head. And I think maybe one note that I can make about drawing Max is keep the technology consistent. So if there's a kind of hinge that you developed, like I'm using like these like really almost like door hinges on the flaps and stuff like that, or the way the scribe lines work, carry those throughout. Don't have a different kind of joint everywhere, except for in the really special places. And that will it just kind of looks like it solidifies the design a little bit as far as I'm concerned. It looks like it's made by one maker versus falling into the trap where it looks like it's just a hodgepodge of different things. And of course, as I say that, if you want it to look like a hodgepodge of different things, well then that's exactly what you need to do. Reposting a question. Okay, so how do I guarantee the correct proportion of a drawing when you don't do the flip test? You should always do the flip test. So if I'm drawing casually, if I'm just relaxing, like I'm just doing this. Flip, flip. I'm doing it all the time. It's just, I have it mapped to F and I do it all the time, but I think just because we're trying to perform for the masses and doing these demos, I'm just not doing it as much. But yeah, if you don't do the flip test, I call it italicizing, but you italicize everything, and it shows up in the worst possible ways, especially human faces. It's the worst. Well, just to be clear, David, I drew the silhouette and I was doing the flip test. So with that silhouette that we started with, like I was doing the flips on, and so like I've already been through the pain of it. So I do have the benefit of not looking like an idiot in front of everybody, because I've already did the idiocy on my own. But yeah, I almost look forward to it now, and I think I started to mention that it's like a little bit like there's a lot of little masochistic things. Because like you start drawing and you convince yourself that you don't need to flip the canvas, that you don't, and you almost start to get afraid of what you're gonna find, because it's a commentary on your abilities when you flip something and it just looks like a hot mess. So I don't know, I kind of enjoy it. Like I go as far as I can without flipping, and then I'm just like I try and convince myself that I'm doing a good job, and then I flip it, and it's just like, wah, wah. You're like, you still suck. I will say that once in a while, and this is very rarely, but once in a while, the flip test takes the life out of things. It gets a little sterile. There are sometimes, especially like when you're drawing action poses, you have to be careful not to fall. Sometimes things do need to read a little bit italicized. Very rarely. Another trick, besides the flip test that works really well, is if I'm really struggling with a design, I'll take a picture of it with my iPhone or whatever phone you guys have, it doesn't matter, and just walk away, and then sit down outside and just take a look at it in a completely different lens. And it's so funny how a lot of the problems just show up scaled down on a different device, in different lighting. All the stuff starts to become really apparent. So if you are struggling with something, or even if you think you're nailing it, and you just want to like take yourself down a notch, take a picture of it, walk away, and then look at it, and you get this like really nice objective view of your own work. But better to be making a mess and have yourself catch it than someone else. Perfect, but it might work for now. I almost need like music playing while I'm going quiet. I always go quiet on these live streams. I don't realize like how much quiet I go on when I'm drawing mechs, because it's like get so much into the concentration of the lines. Alright, head or arm? Head or arm? Let's remedy this arm real quick and then we'll go back and draw the head. Okay, so It's a little wonky, but it's kind of a bag right now. Wonky Mac. Yeah, this is where the detail, like when you draw one. My son actually made a comment about like how people draw asymmetrical mechs today, and it made me laugh because, you know, you see a mech with a huge Gatling gun arm or something like that, and it's really cool looking, but at the same time, like that designer didn't have to draw everything twice in perspective. You just wonder which one was the motivation behind putting that gun on that arm, if it was just really design centric, or if it was that person was struggling with getting that perspective to go across. Even overestimated how much time it would take to do the details on this guy. Underestimated. So now I do the head, and I definitely want to keep this visor. A little bit more skull-like. Let's carry that X on his shoulder onto his face. So that needs more hoses, right? Why didn't you guys say anything? Always needs more hoses. is it without? Alright, so it's 12:30. Let's see. Do I tone it or just call it with the black and white? Alright. I think maybe we'll do like a simple tone on this guy. You guys are willing to put up with it. So just because of the time, I'm going to do, I think I am going to do a fill on this one instead. I love this. There's a couple things in Clip as far as like for filling and kind of like racing through this stuff is like you can do what's called a reference layer. So I actually what Photoshop doesn't do is I'm on a separate layer doing this fill, which makes sense, right? But it's looking at the layer above it as far as like what the parameters are versus Photoshop. You would actually have to be on the exact same layer. And so that's pretty nice because then I can just turn it on and off, but I can mark it to say like, oh, use this layer as what I'm actually trying to use as a fill. I think that's absolutely spectacular. Are just filled with little negative shapes that you have to find. I always find them while I'm doing the flatting. That's pretty good. Alright. So for the base metal, do bit later, and then I'm going to put in some wherever darker, kind of like we'll call it like rubbers and cloths and things like that. Will be this deeper value. It should break up the shapes a little bit. Get a little separation in the forms. I think we're going to make the hoses, some of the hoses, and like his eyes and stuff like that. I have to erase out his eyes. I think we'll make those illuminated. Hoses. See, like those are nice and bright. Like he's got like energy coursing into them, lighting up his shoulder pad. His forearm. See this little Iron Man chest here. And just look for little elements here and there that we can illuminate. And then yeah, we're gonna do his eye. I gotta cut that back out because I darkened it. Okay, oh, and on this little neck hoses. Like a secondary gray. It's like the aluminums. Actually, I guess we're gonna go kind of dark with this guy so that the aluminums stand out a little bit more. And go a little darker with the. There we go. That's better. So then for the aluminums, like wherever like there's like an exposed piece of metal. Maybe these brackets are brushed aluminum or something. Alright, and then go back to the aluminum. We'll do like maybe some of these hinges in here. This is one of those things where it's like it's fun to go too far. And then on the paint, we'll just do like a slightly darker value to kind of like trick out some of these areas. Just gonna help break up the form a little bit. I keep finding things that I forgot. Normally, I would be yapping about making sure you name your layers. I've gotten really kind of heavy-handed with talking about that because I find it's really important to make sure you keep track of what the layers that you're working on are at any given time. Last but not least, do his head kind of bright. almost white. So it looks like a skull head. Yeah, it should work. I mean, I would probably play with some of those things a little bit more. Alright, we'll do the same lighting technique we did last night where we light them from the back. First. So I'm just pretending like there's a little bit of like a backlighting going on. Rim light. And if it's too intense, just calm it down. If you guys have ever come to the channel before, if you haven't, I like to, a lot of times I'll like overpaint and just like really go nuts on it, and then I'll just knock it back afterwards, and that's usually a pretty safe way to work. Then you can really see what you're working on, the details, and then calm it down later. Oh, saving. And a lot of times, like the reason that's important to kind of like practice getting into some lighting is, you know, especially with 3D models, it's not quite as heavy of a problem with 2D productions, but in 3D environments, you want to show the modeler how forms turn, so it does kind of get important to learn accurate lighting, and that just solves problems for them. They, you know, the modeler might not understand how a form is turned if it's just a flat shape, especially when it's a line drawing. So, alright, so now we're gonna start doing some foreground or inner detail lighting. I think I'm just gonna Did anyone have any questions or interesting stories that they can hit me with while I'm kind of doing this pass? This is a little bit me just kind of like stabbing around, bringing up highlights on different forms. I don't mind talking about that either. That's interesting. But recommendations for how to make lighting on your characters more interesting to switch it up from the norm. Yeah, backlighting is always really cool. You know, doing like a heavy backlight character. That can be really fun. And then another fun one to do is blowing out your, like, you know, doing like a really harsh tight shadow, tight highlight area, and then spending a lot of time doing kind of like ambient light in the shadows. You see this like in a lot of illustration stuff, where the subject in the highlight area is pretty blown out, and then but then there's a lot of details shown in the shadow at masses, and that has this really cool look to it as well. Again, that's definitely like more for like your own personal stuff. If you're in a production environment, you do have to make sure that you're helping them out and not giving them some crazy lighting. And then another fun one is like, you know, setting them into something where I could put like dappled light, like he's in like a forest or something like that, and that would be a pretty cool way to make it look like he's somewhere even though he's not anywhere. He's just standing in a void. I don't like any of what I just did there. There we go. Those are some pretty cool ways of just making the lighting feel a little bit more interesting. I think two light directions for me, I'm just not super interested in that all the time, but it definitely has like a cool look to it. Like two harsh lights like you see in like a lot of like film posters and things like that. Have you ever mocked something up in 3D? Sure. I model a lot. I modeled a lot of the Ratchet and Clank characters, especially for PS2, PS3. Modeled the textures of a lot of those characters. So I'm very comfortable modeling in ZBrush and in Maya. And so once in a while, if there's a design that's tricky, I'm happy to jump into 3D and just kind of solve for it in that. And I've actually done concepts where I basically am just using a model as like an under drawing so that everything's really accurate. And I do try to steer away from that a little bit, and only because it does have like a sterility that comes with it. I think it does sort of suck the personality out of things. But if you're doing like ships flying through a city, or you know, you just have like a really complicated character that's just begging for you know, accuracy, then I think it's totally useful. Sometimes it just teaches you how to see the character in different views, and then you go to draw it and it just works much better. Let's see. Have you ever photo bashed some art pieces? I have. I don't like it. I don't like photo bashing. I've been on projects where that was the requirement, and I really didn't enjoy it. That said, I love looking at people's work that can do it really well. I think it's a completely new art or different art, and I love it. But I don't enjoy it. I got into drawing to draw. I love to draw this stuff, and so this is what makes me happy. But that is not in any way a reflection of the types of things that I enjoy outside of that. Let's see. I've been trying to come up with short exercises to talk about for my blog too, to help myself with other art and other artists. Well, that's a good idea. That's cool. I'm a big fan of people helping other people out. I find one of the things that I end up focusing on myself the most as far as discussions goes is just like the psychology of trying to get yourself through getting pieces done, the day-to-day, the work-life balance, motivations, coming up with ideas. Those seems to be kind of like the underlying conversations that I kind of get known for the most. Alright, then we're gonna go and darken some things down. What else we got up here? Do you have streams where you talk in depth about shape language? I yap about a little bit of everything in some of my previous streams that are up on my channel. Specifically shape language, maybe not specifically, but I can definitely do that in one of my future streams where it's really just a lot about shape logic. I mean, I cover it in just about everything in some way because it is like a primary focus for doing stylized characters. But alright, I'm gonna cheat these glows, right? So where's that glow line? There it is. So I'm gonna drag that glow layer, the lights up. I'm gonna blur the crud out of it. Oh, that's what's going on. Well, I screwed that up. Hold on a second. Try that again. Alright, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Now I'll just add to that a little bit. Alright. I think that's getting pretty close to done. Maybe I'm just going to do a little bit of dirt on him. Some battleware and scratches and dirt in there. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but like just to kind of get it a little bit more character. Do I have a 9? X-Bot? Crossbone? Crossbone's a Gundam, I can't steal that one. You guys give me a name, or help me get a name. Alright, I think I'm going to call it there. So, what is that? That's like 2 hours? Like I said, mechs take a long time. But now we have 2 characters on the same silhouette. And tomorrow night we're going to do another one. Tomorrow night I think we'll do like an alien or something like that. If you guys have other suggestions, let me know. But yeah, I mean, I hope you guys can see that, like, just using like that same silhouette it's kind of fun to just kind of like see what else you can do on it, and it just leads to some interesting design challenges as well as like solutions that have already kind of been laid out. But yeah, I appreciate you guys coming out. I love hanging out with everybody and just talking art. I think now that we're all locked up, not seeing everybody, it's nice to be able to hang out and just talk about art. Yeah, my pleasure. So yeah, I'll sit around for about 5 minutes if anybody has any last minute questions. Otherwise, I'll shut the stream off and do the same thing I did last night. I'm going to post this up on YouTube, so the whole thing will be ready for anybody who wants to watch it anytime in the future. So, you know, you can jump on the YouTube channel and watch it anytime, as well as all the other stuff that I'm talking about and anything I do in the future. I don't know. Last question. Why is it called Lost Bear? Oh, that's an I don't know if I've actually gotten into that too much. It was kind of a reflection of where I was at mentally. 2 years ago, I left Insomniac after being there for 17 something years, almost 17 years exactly, and I just had no idea which direction I wanted to go in. A bear has always been kind of like this animal that I relate to personally. I don't want to, it's just sort of like the animal that I've kind of like latched onto as sort of my favorite. Named my dog Bear. And so yeah, it was just kind of like, I just kind of felt like I live in the woods. I was kind of like that. Personally, it just felt like that's who I was at the time. I was just kind of this like wandering idiot, and I had no idea which way was up and what I wanted to focus on. I knew I was going to be, designing characters, but as far as what I wanted to do with the studio, I didn't know. You can't have a bear skull. It's illegal. I think maybe hunters have them, but yeah, you can't really buy certain skulls. They're illegal to have, so no bear skulls. Although they're beautiful. They look like big, hefty dog skulls. How do you balance your work life with all exercises and projects you do? I'm gonna be really honest. I'm terrible at it. I have a terrible sort of like work life, healthy business, balance. I think maybe like every 5 years I have to kind of like do a complete reset, start exercising again, eating well, stop drinking coffee in the middle of the night. Yeah, I'm not good at it. I just like, I really like doing these projects, but they definitely have caused a lot of, like health issues or just, personal relationship issues, things like that. So you do have to be really careful with it, but I'm not going to be able to tell you how to do it because it's just really, really tricky. What do I love most about my job? I just kind of, I don't know, I'm sure you guys are the same. I just sort of like eat and breathe characters and studies and like just their stories, and if I can work in a team environment where I develop a character that is then taken by let's say I design a character and then I give it to a modeler, and that modeler puts their spin on it, and then they give it to a rigger, and that rigger finds ways to make all the the motion a little bit more interesting, and then an animator gets excited about it and they bring it to life, and then the sound guy gets involved and the story guys start adding lines, and you start to hear the final voice of that character, and then you see it on screen brought to life, and you realize like all you really were is the one at the beginning, and you almost like were causing a problem that everyone else down the path had to fix. And then you see this thing come to life on screen at the end, and everybody worked together to kind of like create this baby. I love it. It's like a complete addiction. Like every single time it happens, I'm like just like over the moon excited. So anytime a character goes from a sketch to an idea to a final iteration and comes to life, there are characters that I've designed that I can't help they've gone so far in other people's hands and have had so many permutations that they're like alive in my head, not in like a sicko way, but like they just sort of exist. I can imagine what they would say. It's I love it. Absolutely addictive. So that's what I love most about my job. Just working with other really talented people. And like I said at the beginning, if you can get a team excited, you're a good character designer. You know, it's that is what I think is, you know, because they all have really good taste. As you join teams, I'm sure anybody here who's worked on a team, you know, like when you get like a top-notch animator excited and wanting to just test their skills out because you drew something that gets them wanting to practice their craft in ways, oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. I think that's the goal. Just constantly feed really creative people stuff that they want to work on. And I'll be happy. Alright. Any last questions? Because otherwise, I'll do my post on this stuff and then catch up with you guys tomorrow. Alright. But I will see you guys tomorrow. I really appreciate everybody coming out. You guys all have a good night too.